This is Boomer Life on CL 650.
Help! I need somebody. Help! Not just anybody. Help! You know I need someone.
And we're back. This is Boomer Life on CL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton, joined today by Jim Doyle, Senior Financial Consultant with Investors Group. So on Boomer Life today, we're actually talking about your financial future. Now, Jim is no stranger to the media. Jim has had articles published in the Financial Times, the National Post, the Province, the Vancouver Sun. Jim, you're a frequent contributor to Business in Vancouver. You've also appeared on the City TV Morning Show and the Bill Good Show, as well as the Family Matters television series on Check TV with Judge Harvey Brownstone, speaking on wills and estates, as well as family finances and divorce. And Jim, before the break, we were talking a little bit about your credibility in dealing with couples in divorce and those who have become suddenly single. We spoke about the issues couples face when they lose a partner, suddenly become widowed. And while there are some things you probably should deal with right away, there's probably a few things that you can put off till later when you're ready to talk more about it. Do you have a story or two you wanted to share about this?
Well, Joanne, a few years ago, I had a call from a longtime client. Let's call her Sue. She was calling me from the hospital. Her husband had been taken to the hospital by ambulance, and she'd call me back when she had more details. A few weeks later, Sue called to let me know her husband was at home, but it was looking like she wasn't going to be able to provide the care he needed. She needed help applying for her husband's short-term disability insurance offered through his work. Several weeks later, after numerous trips to the hospital, it turned out he had reached the point where he was not going to be able to come out of the hospital. They proposed he be transferred to a care facility.
Sounds like a sad story, but one that all of us might be able to relate to in some way. So going into a care facility, that's a traumatic event for anybody. I think many of our listeners hope that they have support to help them through tough times like this.
Oh, you're right. These things often take more time than anticipated, and having strong support can help ease some of the stress. For Sue's husband, it wasn't easy to find a care facility that would take him. The next part was paying for his care and determining what income sources would be used in this calculation. Not all care facilities, charge the same, and for those lucky enough to get into community care or government-sponsored programs, the cost can be less.
Absolutely, and you can't always get into the one that you want either, or the one that's closest to your home. You pretty well have to go with what you're designated with. And you know, it's really hard for us to think of our parents getting older and maybe someday needing levels of care or assisted living, but I don't think we ever think that it's going to happen to us.
The decisions Sue was being asked to make were coming at her hard and fast. No sooner had her husband become disabled, and we were helping to fill out the paperwork to qualify for the short-term disability insurance, than his situation deteriorated to the point where he was required to leave the hospital and go to a care facility, and she now needed help applying for the long-term disability insurance from his employer. The care facility wanted 80% of his income. Sue didn't have any other sources of income and was concerned about how she was going to get by.
Wow, this is a sad story. So where did you go from here?
This was a pretty hard time for Sue. She was facing multiple healthcare issues at the same time as facing financial choices, and a lot of these challenges were absolutely new to her. Did I mention before we started this, they were in the process of selling their home and moving to a new place?
Oh, my.
These were pretty troubling times. One thing this couple had done right, they had a current power of attorney in place.
So what do you mean by power of attorney?
Now, I'm probably not going to cover everything you should know about power of attorneys, but it's a great question to ask your lawyer. Now, the power of attorney is often attached to a will. It appoints someone to manage your finances in the event of incapacity. I will always be eternally grateful that this couple included it when they last revised their wills. I don't want to imagine how absolutely difficult it would have been without this. Now, I don't think many of us ever anticipate using a power of attorney to do things financially for our loved ones. If I had a tip, I might suggest getting several legal copies. You might need a power of attorney to deal with issues relating to the house, the mortgage, the insurance, the investments, bank accounts, and even taxes.
Wow, this has been a big reminder. I do have power of attorney, but I do need to get my will updated. Anyhow, back to Sue. It sounds like there were a lot of changes taking place and a lot of emotional decisions as well.
You know, for the first time in a long time, she was put in the position of making financial decisions all on her own. It was a pretty uncomfortable spot for her. She'd relied upon her husband's advice to help make decisions, but he was in a care facility, and she needed help to create a reliable stream of income from her existing investments, many of which were jointly owned. The first mortgage payment was going to come due shortly, and she needed to be able to make those ongoing monthly payments.
Figuring out which assets you have, what the tax issues are, and where you can take a regular income stream from, well, that sounds like a big job and a job for a financial planner. But I still have a question. Are there any special concerns around jointly held investments in a situation like this?
Joanne, I'm glad you brought this up. Many financial institutions require joint instructions on joint investments. So when your partner can't offer those instructions, here's another example of where that power of attorney can come in handy. When you lose your partner, you might be able to transfer them into your name alone, but otherwise, the transactions on joint investments could be tricky.
So is this where you're going to tell us that Sue lost her partner? Is that right?
Yeah. You know, even when loss is anticipated, when it eventually happens, it still seems unexpected. We'd been in the process of starting his pension, so when he passed away, we had to arrange for her to receive a survivor's pension. The toughest part of all of this is that it happened in relatively short order, and she needed a lot of help to understand and get through all the paperwork. I suggested we look only at the immediate issues she's going to need to address, things like immediate cash flow, and the cash needed for immediate expenses. Most other things we could address in due order when she was ready to have those discussions. I could see her sense of relief coming across her face.
So how is Sue today?
It took a while to sort everything out. There were final tax returns to sort out and a few other items. But today she's busy decorating her new home. She bought some new appliances and she did some renovations. She volunteers some of her time in the community, and I think she has a trip planned for the fall.
Wow, and you helped her manage all of that, Jim? That's an excellent story. I think it highlights a very important choice here, that you could choose to work with an advisor who only looks after your investments, or you could choose to work with someone who also understands the non-financial sides of things and someone who really cares. In tough times like these, what you often need is help and support to make sure you're making the best decisions for your future. I really like the idea of you being there for the long haul for your widows, not just for their investment matters.
There are a lot of bits to tie together here, and you don't want to be making mistakes, especially when it comes to your lifestyle. Where greed or emotions are involved, that's not a great space to be making decisions in. I think at a time like this, we all could use a little help, making sense of investments, income choices, the tax and estate issues, covering aspects that typically don't get thought of. I really want to think about a whole picture perspective.
Well, it's clear that you take the time to listen and understand the whole story before exploring options and outcomes, including the impact of choices made today. And here's the really important part, consequences in the future. I think this step-by-step approach that we're speaking of really highlights the difference between working with an investment advisor and working with a financial planner. You're listening to Boomer Life on CL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton. Today we're speaking with Jim Doyle, Senior Financial Consultant with Investors Group. And still a lot more to come in this show, including some thoughts on family businesses and some of the unique planning issues that they face. That's next on Boomer Life on CL 650. To learn more about Jim Doyle and how he helps financially comfortable Canadians, simply go to jimdoyle.ca, or you can call him locally at 604-682-5431. We'll be right back.
Canada's only weekly radio show dedicated to the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.